All right, welcome to the Restless bonus, where we are going to talk a little bit more about emotions, but we're going to talk about it in the terms of the Psalms. And so Pastor Michael at the end of our podcast is talking about this idea of having joy, of praising God, but in doing it, I would say just strictly on faith. You know, that's why it is an affection, because you can do it with clenched fists, you can do it with sorrow, these things. And here is actually the first time I just want to tell this brief story of the first time I ever realized that why is the worship services I'm familiar with not more informed by and containing more of the Psalms? And so I travel, I was overseas and I was at a Christian conference. Yeah, and it just a very different context. And you know what? It was very strange singing translated modern Christian worship music with this group. Because the focus, as you said, the focus on the good emotions, on feeling good, and I'm feeling sad and God's going to make me feel glad, and all of these kinds of things, it made no sense it just did not make sense of the Christian life I knew most of these people had. And what I realized is that, as you said, it was very, very one note, right? It's hitting one emotional chord and just hitting it again and again. And again, that might be a legitimate chord.
Right. But then you have the law of diminishing return, right? Exactly. I mean, as you just keep hitting that over and over and over and over again, after a certain point, people just get tired, right? I mean, you just get kind of like, well, it's just fake. It's not real anymore. And right. I just heard, I can't remember what I was listening to, but I was just listening to a conversation recently where somebody was talking about how, actually when you think about the idea of kind of the law of diminishing returns, when it comes to our experiences, it's actually a sign in a sense that we are made for, greater and greater things. That we are made for a greater and greater experiences. And obviously that's found most obviously in experiencing and knowing God himself, who is, infinite, who is all glorious and all powerful. And we are meant to know God deeper and deeper forever, from this point on. It's just going to keep going. And that's why, in a sense, the first time you have a particular kind of dessert, you might be like, man, I can't believe I didn't know brownies were a thing. And this is the best thing I've ever had. This is amazing. And then you're going to try brownies again and it'll be like, man, this is still pretty good. And you keep eating it. But there is this kind of diminishing, okay, yeah, I've had it now. Those particular, brain chemicals have told me that's really good. But it's never, it's not going to be maybe quite the same. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. It doesn't mean you have to feel every time like, man, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. But if all you ate was brownies, if that's all you had, that kind of law of diminishing return is going to be, I don't know, all the more quickly realized. All of a sudden you're going to be sick to your stomach after a little while, and you're just going to get tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are, you brought me to the two things, right? When I thought about the idea of these people singing the Psalms, or the Psalm book being the hymn book of the church, the hymn book of Israel, man, there's a lot more there. There is just joy, or there is, God, I'm not doing well, I need your help. There is, God, I'm angry. There is, God, you are good, right? There is a huge, we listed the range of experience and affections that Edward said was essential to the Christian life. And that is what you find when you look at the Psalms. And the other thing I think about this is I think sometimes people get really worried when they think about their early Christian life and then their later Christian life, because they remember being what you're kind of talking about. The first time I had a brownie, this hotness, this excitement that they don't seem to be able to replicate. And I've begun to wonder if that actually is just normal, but it's part of why we actually need to cultivate affections.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it like marriage, the
right.
way you felt the first time you held your wife's hand is you actually can't replicate that.
Yeah.
But the emotional relationship, the connection you have today, and obviously your and I's parents much further along in life than we are, right? That is not something you would trade for those
That's right.
early feelings, because it is a much deeper, it is a much more stable and glorious and cultivated and probably meaningful emotional connection.
Yeah, and you would say there's something really wrong. And I mean, we see this, right? Where, people will, end their marriages because it's like, well, I just didn't feel it anymore. I don't feel the same way. And most of us could look at that and say, well, that's super tragic because I don't feel the same way I felt when I first met my wife, but I feel much deeper. My love for my wife is so much deeper. And I like enjoy her so much more, but it's not the kind of joy that is like just this constant, like I walk in the room and everything is better about my life all of a sudden, and like all of my attention. You know what it's like when
Yeah.
you're just first getting to know this girl, and it's like, all of my attention, all my thought life is like directed toward this. It's not quite that same intensity at all times. Sometimes it is, but there is this like beautiful consistency. You think if I think in kind of organic, metaphors. So, when you have some kind of plant that shoots up really quick, that happens. There are plants like that, but they're never the strong ones. They're never the ones that can, weather a full storm. They're never the ones that, are extremely tough. With maybe, something like bamboo as the exception. But even bamboo, like, the strongest bamboo, I don't think that it would, be quite the same as, like a redwood or
Yeah.
a really massive oak tree. And those things, I mean, they took so long to grow, but they are so stable and so strong and so like, and they're able to produce so much more, and like so much more comes from them. And so I often think that way with, metaphors of marriage. And the same thing is true then in, this kind of emotional life. And I think that's what the Psalms like point us toward, right? I mean, it is the slow, careful growth of the kingdom that happens in each one of us as the gospel, as the word of God sanctifies us and we become more and more like Christ. It's something that happens slowly, but that in the long run actually develops greater and deeper and stronger affections.
And and as I'm thinking about this, the Psalms, right? Some of the Psalms, right, are written in the first person, right? But obviously many are written in a plural first person. I should have
Yeah.
said a singular, but a plural of the people
Yep.
of God. And because I've actually had this realization as I now have children, right? Often, especially maybe in your and I's generation, we really have this tendency to want to like hold on to all the things we had as kids and like,
Yep.
yep, they're right. I am just as into Star Wars as I was when I was 10.
Yeah.
And right, this is why all the movies they make for adult, right? This is why they just made that
They just
ridiculous Cruella DeVille PG-13 backstory. I don't know who,
right.
if dear listener, if you saw that movie and were really interested, we would not love to talk
No,
we'd love to talk to you, but
I have
we
personally
cannot
zero
imagine
desire.
we can't imagine talking about that for any longer. But right, this is why they're making it. But what I've realized is, well, how would I enjoy Star Wars, right? Because when you're 10 and you're like, I'm willing to defend this as the greatest piece
Right.
of of film and acting that has ever happened, right? And we want to act that way now when maybe we should be growing and maturing. But how do you experience those things again? Well, we try and hold on to it with nostalgia. We try, these various things we do. But what I've realized is actually the way you enjoy it is you watch your children enjoy it.
Hmm.
You enjoy it with them.
Yeah.
And when you are experiencing the Lord and you are experiencing Christianity in amongst the covenant people of God, and these are real relationships,
Yeah.
when someone has a testimony of coming to faith, you can praise God again,
That's right.
just like it was for you. When people
Yeah.
have covenant
Yeah.
children, you can appreciate the fundamentals of the faith again as you see your children and other children learn it.
Yeah. And emotions are so personal, right? And it really is. This is why we mentioned in the episode that I think that so many movies and TV and commercials and all these things they are emotionally manipulative is in part because this is not real people. Emotions are very personal, right? It's for people, it's for relationships, it's between me and God, it's between me and others, or it's between me and myself, right? But they have to do with us as people. I can't help but think that this is a problem then when you are trying to direct these things toward something that is not another person. But, for instance, you could work yourself up into, an emotional state by just singing certain songs or hymns that are just, musically very powerful. But we recently, this was maybe, I don't believe it was this past week. It was maybe the week before, when we're recording this. I preached on Psalm, I want to say it was Psalm 42, as a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. And I preached this psalm, and then afterward, we sang the song, It Is Well With My Soul, which is, it's a very powerful song anyway. And you could get kind of, wrapped up in the music of this song, the way that it moves. But I almost couldn't make it through the song without just beginning to weep. And the reason was not because of the song itself, but because while we were singing it, I kind of remember, well, it was an emotional experience that was tied both to what we had just gone through with the psalm, with simply just like looking out at, this congregation of people that I love, knowing that some of these people are suffering and yet they're trusting in God. So it was that kind of, emotional connection to we as the people of God are now bringing these things to God and praising him for it. And then also I remember there was a gentleman in our presbytery who at one point had something happen to him where he went in and he got a diagnosis that basically he might die any moment. And it was some weird like immune issue. And I don't remember all the details, but it was just before we had a Presbyterian meeting at his church, at the church that he pastored. And he lives in a house just out back next to the church. And he couldn't see anybody because it was this issue with his immune system was such that if he was to get even the slightest cold, he could die, just right away. I mean, it was that serious. And we went back by his house and stood at a distance, and he came out, and we just wanted to see him and pray with him. And then we wanted to sing, and we just, this presbytery full of, these, all these grown men, we sang. And one of the songs we sang first, he kind of gave a little testimony just about, he was terrified and he was scared that he might not get to, like see his son graduate from high school. And just that, like the emotional, like weight of that, was just, extreme, the suffering and the fear. And then we sang together. And he gave a testimony just then to the faithfulness of God in the midst of it. And we sang, one of the songs we sang was It Is Well With My Soul. And every time I sing that now, I can't help but remember just the goodness and faithfulness of God, where here this whole presbytery of men stood and sung this song. Every one of us was weeping. At least I'm pretty sure. I didn't look around a lot because I was weeping, but like we're all just like singing and weeping as we are singing It Is Well With Our Soul. And so like these experiences of the faithfulness of God in the midst of unbelievable sorrow and difficulty and fear and pain that I have been through and am going through, and that I know others are going through. And yet here we are singing this song again. And I couldn't, I almost couldn't get through it. I had to, stop singing at times because I was like, well, I have to keep leading the service, as we close. But yeah, so I mean, this is,
and that
it's personal.
That is, one, I want to say, see everybody, Presbyterians cry too,
That's right.
And, but again,
this is going to be one of our t-shirts. Presbyterians cry too.
Don't be a Donatist, right? There's all kinds of good stuff we have for t-shirts. But again, I think that even the themes you're working through there, this is Psalm stuff.
That's right.
Right. The faithfulness of God, even though I'm suffering and others are suffering, but we still are together. We're trusting God. Right. This is Psalm stuff. And I think that as you think about the people of God singing psalms or hymns or songs like this is also one of the benefits to having historic songs and rich songs is all of this starts getting packed into those things.
Yeah.
Whereas if we have to start busting in new things because we have to find a way to get that new kick every time, because the whatever the last song is lost all of the fire, right? We can't
Right. Oceans isn't feeling the same way anymore. And so we got to come up with something else.
Dude, I'm sure we've really dated ourselves by mentioning that as the thing. I don't know if people sing that or not still, but you lose that. And I think that it's so cheap to just say you should sing the Psalms, or you should, like, I don't want to just say that. There's a sense that which whatever it takes, part of becoming the Christian is by faith. You sing the Psalms, you bleed the Psalms, right?
Yeah. And
because
you join in with that history of people who are, worshiping God right now in glory. You join in with this kind of song that has been going on.
And I can say you should bleed the Psalms, because when they cut Christ, when Christ was bleeding, what did he say, or what did he sing?
Yeah.
My God, why have you forsaken me? That is the beginning of a psalm, right?
That's right.
That was sang originally by David, sang by the people of God, and Christ uses that to communicate what is happening on the cross.
Yeah.
That, like, right, that is a thing that boggles the mind.
Yeah.
And I actually, I'll give my own another personal, testimony here before we end is, in the last year, due to just how negative, right, the news, how social media is. And again, right, it's not that, being informed is bad, but we've talked about this, and maybe we will more, right? News is entertainment, and maybe we've talked about this as Christianity as entertainment, but that when I choose and I pull away and I go, I'm not going to listen to the normal news podcasts, I'm not going to engage in those things. Do you know what I find? I find it's a lot easier to be tender and convicted by my own sin.
Yeah.
I find I'm a lot quicker to right, my affections of sorrow, of joy, of wanting to help, much, and especially for me, in confessing my own sin, they're much quicker and much more ready for me. And I just wonder if it's because I have chosen to pull away from these things that are essentially just manipulative, right? And probably in the case of news, it's right, I'm no longer focused on all the bad things and bad people out there, but I'm sitting quietly with my own sin, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, and yeah, all of a sudden your affections can be directed much more at, the people around you, whether that be yourself, whether that be the Lord, whether that be, your family, your church.
I think we mentioned this in an early episode, right? This is why Augustine and the Puritans were like, I don't know about the theater, right? We think that they were crazy legalists, but they were like, fake things affect me in a way that real life can't, right? And they thought that was a thing. I don't know. Maybe they were legalistic about it, but they at least had a point. That's at least something to think about.
Oh yeah. I mean, ever since we had this conversation, I don't even think it was on this podcast. I think that we had this conversation though. And ever since, it's just been wrecking me to think every time I've cried at a movie, which does happen. Sure. I've thought, what am I doing? Like, is this real? Like, is this emotionally stunting me so much so that I'm not going to be able to cry as much or like be as emotionally affected by the lives of my children?
Right.
Seriously, that has absolutely like wrecked my mind. I haven't stopped watching movies, although I've been watching a lot less probably.
Right. Saying goodbye to Michael Scott on The Office, the amount of times I've done it, has that ruined me for actually leaving relationships? I don't know. Again, it's something to consider, because if we're saying, right, if someone's saying you need to sing the Psalms for this, right, it's just, I'm not trying to make that cheap. I just think it is, I'd say in the conservative reform podcasting world, it can become cliche. But what they're saying is fill yourself up with these things to shape your emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Why are you downcast, oh my soul? And why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation, my God. Like you can draw up in the midst, like you feel this way, but you're going to say, no, I'm going to feel hope. I'm going to trust in God again. even though I'm in turmoil.
Or something triggers you. I'm feeling forsaken by God.
Yep.
You're triggered to think, how does Psalm 22 end?
Yeah.
Oh, it ends with a redemption. It ends with, and even, but right. Why do we say get into the Psalms? Because to fill it up like this. And that would mean then don't fill up your emotional life with the equivalent of just all cotton candy.
Yeah.
Right. If Psalms are the truly nutritious, cultivating, strong, red oak growing Christian fertilizer, well, then these other things are not necessarily sinful, but they too are shaping you. So anyways, the Psalms, we just almost were about to just do another episode, so we better cut it here because it's
we
still
better slow it
summer.
down. It is Restless
better
Summer.
Slow it down. It is Restless Summer. So join us next week, where I'm sure we'll interview someone, and I'm sure it'll just be chillaxed, like we're on a beach.
It'll be fun
and like
and
it was
enjoyable.
2011, where we still said chillaxed, and it'll be great. So thanks for joining us for this Restless bonus. Sit in the AC. It's hot outside. We'll catch you later.